So hello everyone and welcome to our webinar Beyond Spreadsheets, and thank you for joining. It's great to be with you this morning. My name is Jason Ledley. I'm the Vice President of Strategic Partnerships at LabKey, and although we're headquartered in Seattle, I'm here in the UK. We have a UK office. I'm based in North Hampshire, which is somewhat 40 miles or so outside of London. And so why this webinar? Well, we engage with literally hundreds of folks throughout the year. And if there's one common theme that we quite often hear about, it's the need to move away from spreadsheets to a more robust and scalable solution. So I thought it would be worth just spending 30 minutes or so talking about that and potentially how LabKey can help with it too. Just to let you know that this is being recorded, so for anyone who's registered, we will send out a recording after the webinar is completed. And feel free, if there are any questions, you'll see the chat box or Q&A box there. Feel free to send them through. I've got quite a lot to get through, and I'm flying solo. So if we get to them, great. If we don't worry. My email address is here. I will reach out to you directly, or you can reach me directly with any questions, and I will come back to you to address them. Okay. So just before we dive in here, a little bit about LabKey. So for more than 20 years now, we've been helping researchers move off spreadsheets to unleash the potential of using structured data in a more robust and scientific data management solution. LabKey is literally expert in research data management. And although for the best part of our history, we've been dedicated to the life science sector, due to the flexibility of our products, we've actually seen increase in demand over the previous years to meet the needs of other segments around the world. So we are starting now to work with mining and food and beverage and environment and nuclear waste and all sorts of other segments around the world. After all, data is data. Now, we partner very closely with our customers. We share best practices. We implement solutions which are tailored to specifically meet the needs of those customers. But importantly, we deliver solutions that can adapt and change with the changing needs of researchers over time. And we see that as critically important. Now, looking at the attendees here, it's great to see many of our existing customers have joined. So hi, welcome, and thank you once again for your time. And I'm sure they will attest to the world-class support and the passion that we bring our partnerships around the world. It really is a game changer. And just to add that all the support for all of our products is fully included in the subscription of the software, where most other vendors in this space will charge additionally. LabKey doesn't. Your success is our biggest priority. And lastly, from a product standpoint, we are all ears. We absolutely welcome feedback on our products. Your feedback helps drive our product strategy. If you're seeing features and functions which are missing in our product, we want to know about that. And then we can set the priority for building them and where we can continue to meet the changing needs of researchers over time. Okay, so why spreadsheets in science? Well, at first glance, in fairness, there are very good reasons why we would use spreadsheets in science. They're pretty easy to use. Everybody uses them, so they're pretty ubiquitous, and they're relatively cheap. In fact, in some cases, even free. So I'm sure we can all appreciate why we use them. There's a great attraction for that. And it is why that 90% of organizations still rely on spreadsheets for critical data management operations and to make informed decisions. So what's the problem? Well, the real issue here comes down to hidden costs. Those costs that are not so obvious and easily overlooked, as well as some of the drawbacks that can seriously affect lab operations, ultimately science, and then lead to poor decision making. For example, there is no inbuilt version control with spreadsheets, so you can very quickly end up with multiple versions of the same file, leading to question, which version are we using? Have I got the latest version? Has it been updated? And we can see the problems that could create. Human error is another big pitfall, data entry from humans, and collaborating across numerous spreadsheets, especially in very large numbers. It can be a minefield. And spreadsheets were never designed to scale. So the more there are, the deeper the problem and the more complex it can be to resolve. Operational efficiencies will ultimately introduce scientific risk. I think we're aware of that. And that's due to data inconsistencies. It's due to mislabeling samples. It could be misformatting of data. And in turn, this directly affects things like findability and prohibits traceability, and therefore results in business risks due to compliance failures, inadequate auditing, missed milestones, and critically, perhaps even lost funding. Now, some of these or all of these may be familiar to you, and maybe that's the reason you are here. We hear it all of the time, and hence we wanted to do this webinar. The good news, though, looking at the number of attendees here, is you're not alone. As I mentioned, 90% of organizations still rely on spreadsheets. The second bit of good news is we can help. There are solutions and we actually want to help. As we have repeatedly found over the years, actually the investment cost and the level of effort of migrating off spreadsheets to a digital solution can dwarf the costs of the compounding impact of some of the risks that I've already mentioned. And that's the reality. Now, aside from level of effort and costs, of course, we recognize there are additional barriers to moving off spreadsheets. One of them could be the quality of your data. Maybe it's not in the structure that you need it to be. Maybe there's spreadsheets with missing data in them. And today, that may not be as onerous as it seems. If your organizations allow it, there are plenty of AI tools in the marketplace today that will help you to spot inconsistencies in that data and even suggest common vocabularies that you could use. If within your organization you have access to data scientists or bioinformaticians, they may even be able to craft scripts that can help programmatically address the data issue. And to be fair, even within spreadsheets, there are some tools that you could use to help organize data, things like remove duplicates or conditional formatting. There are even some vendors out there that will provide help with migration and implementation. So it's a good idea to tap into those if it's available to you. But as mentioned earlier, with LabKey, that support from day one is completely included in the subscription. We will help with the data. We will help with the migration. We will help with optimizing the data model and iterating upon it. We will manage the onboarding. We will manage the training, and we're there for technical support as well. As I mentioned, your success in using a LIMS is our first priority. The other barrier, of course, is change. We're all humans and we resist change. That's understandable. But we have extensive experience and expertise to assist with this over our 20-year tenure. So led by a dedicated technical account manager or by one of our product specialists, we have a framework that's primarily designed to ensure progressive, iterative, and a value-driven approach. And that's designed to ensure success and, more than anything, adoption, so that you see the true value of the LIMS. Today, I want to focus on what's important when it comes to LIMS. I'll show you a LIMS that is highly intuitive, easy to use, easy to learn, easy to adopt, and therefore one that can deliver value. I'll show you a LIMS with very robust sample identification. I'll show you a LIMS that is flexible and can be configured to the way that you want to use it, rather than being confined by the product itself. And a LIMS that ensures traceability, particularly using chain of custody with robust auditing, and a LIMS that makes it very easy to find your samples. So common themes you'll hear me talk about in the demonstration today will be adoptability, migratability, findability, and traceability. And in fact, these key themes are the very tenets upon which LabKey LIMS was actually built. So taking just a very quick look at the LIMS before I dive into the demonstration, it's comprised of 6 key elements. At the very core is sample management. We're a sample-centric organization. We also have against that workflows. That's the ability to track your samples through a sequence of lab-based tasks, which in LabKey LIMS are automated with business logic. We have the ability to manage the storage and location of samples. It has a fully integrated and data-connected electronic laboratory notebook. You have the ability to generate charts and visualizations of your data from within the product, and you can also integrate assay data, instrument data, or test result data to the sample. So in effect here, you've got 6 products in one, all under the hood, which are all interoperable in LabKey LIMS. Okay, just before I continue here, just let me know if there are any questions. I can't see any just yet, which is great. So I will dive into LabKey LIMS here. No questions just as yet. Perfect, that's okay. All right, so this is LabKey LIMS. Now, for some of you, you may have already seen LabKey Sample Manager, and this has exactly the same user interface for consistency and for seamlessness. This is primarily cloud-based. We use AWS, and we have hosting capabilities in Ireland for Europe for GDPR purposes. So there are no IT overheads on your side at all. We manage everything related to the software. All you would need is internet access, of course, and a web browser. What I hope you'll see through this demonstration as I go through it is how easy it is to use, how intuitive it is, and how clean the interface is. That should become very apparent as we get into it. As I mentioned, our LabKey LIMS is sample-centric, and for that very reason, the first thing you come to on the landing page here is your sample dashboard. Here, it shows all of my different sample types and the number of each sample type I have within the entire database. Now, a unique facet to this is that with LabKey LIMS, you can have unlimited sample types, and for each sample type, you can have unlimited custom fields. That's very important because there are other competitors in this marketplace that will limit the number of sample types or custom fields, charge extra for them, and you're reliant on the vendor sometimes to set them up. That is not the case with LabKey LIMS. You're in complete control of it all of the time. We can also set up statuses here. So on the right-hand side, you can see these different statuses. You can have as many of these as you want to, and they're reflected in the dashboard by these color-coordinated bars. So as I hover over the dashboard here, I can see the status of my samples. So there's quite a lot to get from the dashboard just by moving your mouse around it. In terms of navigation, we have what we call a mega menu. So the top left here, you'll see this downward arrow. So if I hit that, it will open up this navigation pane. On the left-hand side here, you've got what we call project folders, and this allows you to securely partition data between different user groups. So let's say, for example, you had data in Lab A folder and there was data in Lab B folder, and you didn't want groups using or having access to those different folders. You can partition that securely using the permissions that exist within the settings of the user interface. Then you've got source types. This is important. This is where your samples are coming from, or a way of grouping samples together. So as I'll show you shortly, you might say, show me all the samples I have for a particular participant, so you can group them together. Knowing where your samples come from would be important in lineage, and I'll show you that shortly. And a sample can have multiple sources. Then you've got sample types. So as I mentioned, as many of those as you want to. The same with assays, and the same with storage, which can be both cold store and room temperature storage. Your workflows, which in LabKey LIMS are automated, are up here, which you can access, and you can save those as templates, so you don't have to recreate them every time you want to use them. You have pick lists. Now, pick lists are custom tables made up of different sample types. So you may want to create a table perhaps with 2 serum and 3 tissue and 4 urine samples. Maybe that's your manifest and you want to print it and ship it. So that's what pick lists are for. It's a means of collaborating across data types, sample types. Then down the bottom here, you've got your notebooks, electronic laboratory notebooks. And you'll notice everything here is hyperlinked. So I could hop into a freezer, I could look at a particular sample type, I could look at a particular participant. And this is the navigation means by which we can get around the entire database. Now, this webinar, of course, is about getting off spreadsheets. I want to show you today how easy it is within 3 clicks to migrate off a spreadsheet into a digital solution like LabKey LIMS. The way we're going to do that is by importing an Excel spreadsheet. So the way we do that would be to add samples here and select the option to import the file. I'm going to import a single sample type here called bone marrow. but you can import multiple sample types in one go. And all I'm going to do here, which I think it might be difficult for you to see, is grab an Excel spreadsheet and I'm going to drag it to this bar here and allow the system then to read that file. So here you can see a template. So it started to read the first couple of lines of that Excel spreadsheet. And on the right-hand side, then the bottom here, I then press import. So it's going to read that file, and that took me 3 clicks, and we are now off a spreadsheet and have migrated into LabKey LIMS. As you can see, if I scroll down and to the right, you can see all of these different fields. Some of these are system generated fields, typically the sample ID, of course, which you can configure. And of course, it'll also generate barcodes, but there are some other system fields in here as well. Now, I mentioned that you can have unlimited custom fields, and I will show you that. So if you go to the Manage button here and then Edit Sample Type Design, if you scroll down to the Field section, here you can see the fields that were originally imported from the Excel spreadsheet. Okay. On the right-hand side, then the bottom here, I can then see the Add Field button, and I can then add myself as many of these fields as I wish. Naturally, in doing so, you would then give it a label, and then you would tell the system what type of data you intend to put in the field. This is quite important because depending on your selection, you can then functionalize the field to undertake different tasks. Typically, for example, you might have a calculation where within the table, it will undertake a calculation, perhaps start volume, volume used, and it will calculate the volume remaining. You can also add documents to a table. You can also add multiple choice options within a table. So a number of different options exist for functionalizing the fields, and you can also make them required. So now, once I have my chosen table, let's assume we've customized it and we're happy with it. What the system will then do is provide you with a template. So it remembers your chosen custom field. If I download that template, it will provide me with an Excel spreadsheet, which is empty, but it will have all of your chosen metadata headings here. That's what I would then populate next time, and then I would use the same process to import that file to add more data to my sample type. And that's how straightforward and how simple that process actually is. There are some things I can do within the table here too. If I wanted to hit this downward arrow here, I could edit the label, I could insert another column, or I could hide the column. So there are things you can do at the table level as well. So very easy to migrate. Now, in terms of the concept of findability, there are a number of ways of finding samples within the product here. The quickest and easiest way would be to use the search bar on the top right. So here you have the option to search and scan by barcodes. As I mentioned, we do support them. Or you could search by sample ID. Very easy. And you can do that with multiple IDs. So you just literally type it in. Now, assuming though you have many thousands of samples within the database, you're likely going to want something more sophisticated to find those samples. And for that reason, we've built Sample Finder. Now, I can't write SQL. I'm not a developer. And so what we've built in Sample Finder is the ability to execute a SQL search string against the relational backend database, but just using the power of a mouse, point and click. So in this case, let's say, for example, I was interested in finding out, as I mentioned I would, all the samples I have within the database for a particular participant. So I'm going to select participant number 1. And within 3 clicks, it's executed that search and presented me with a table of all the samples associated to this participant. It's even broken them out by sample type on different tabs here. This is great, except for I have 43 entries here, 43 rows, and that's a little bit too big for me to work with. So what we would then do is add additional search properties to narrow that search down. So maybe of all those samples associated to participant 1, I'm only interested in whole blood. And maybe of those whole blood samples, maybe I'm only interested in finding out which samples have been shipped. So by adding additional search criteria and properties, I can narrow that down to a list which is far more manageable for me to work with. Now, if this is a search you want to repeat again at another time, once the data is dynamically updated, you could save that search, which will be available in your Save Search list here. I could, if I wanted to, edit and add more search properties. I can also export, as I can every table throughout the user interface, into CSV, Excel, or TSV. So we're not only shown how easy it is to get the data in, we can also get that data back out. You'll also notice that if I wanted to, from the visualization standpoint, I could then plot and create charts and illustrations of this data, which I won't show you today, but know that that functionality exists. Okay, so if we go to whole blood, let's go down to the sample level now and see what the sample level looks like. I'm going to choose whole blood. I'm going to search for a particular sample here within my table. And here's the sample of interest. So it's whole blood 5043. So another example of the capability of finding samples. So the findability. When I go to the sample level here, the first thing it's going to show me is exactly where that sample is within my storage location. So here I can see it's in my -20 on this shelf, rack and box, and specifically it's in position A9. Now in our system, we can also support right-clicking. So rather than navigating to the freezer from the mega menu, if I wanted to, I could right-click this box, open up a new browser tab here, and go straight to the freezer without losing my place. In addition to knowing where the sample is within the location here, I also know the volume I have, the number of times it's been frozen and thawed, and the date and time it first went into that storage location. On the right here, we can see we've got 6 aliquots. And if this sample has been referenced at all in any laboratory notebook, those notebooks will be listed here on the right-hand side. Again, I could go into it to take a look. This is a typical notebook within our ELN. You can see some different facets here and text editing tools. And these are the ability to reference your samples. So here would allow me then to go back into LabKey LIMS to go and see the sample. So it's bi-directional. Now at the sample level, no matter where you are in the user interface, you'll always have the context of the sample in front of you, the metadata. And so in this page, if we scroll down, those custom fields are listed here and the associated metadata is seen on the right-hand side. In this field, it's an example of a document. In this case, we have an image of the sample. It could be a file, it could be a document, it could be a PDF, a Word doc, it could be anything. Okay, you'll then see that this menu bar at this sample level has now changed. And I mentioned earlier on in the presentation the importance of source types for creating lineage. So if I go to the lineage tab here, what it will actually do is draw out the lineage of this sample. It tells me where the sample has come from and what's been derived or extracted from it. So these get quite complicated, so I can zoom in, zoom out, and push it around at my convenience. But again, at the sample level, the metadata is always in front of you. And so to find that, all I would do is click the node, and there again, in front of me, is the metadata. So it means I don't have to go back to a previous page. I can stay on the page I am at or on to see the context of the sample. Similarly, if I wanted to know a bit about the participant here, where the blood came from, I click the node and we can see we've got an African-American male, 28 years of age, sadly with cancer. And similarly, the protocol and so on and so forth. We can see here in the lineage that we have 6 aliquots. And so up here, if I hit the aliquots tab, we'll have a custom table again with the chosen metadata for aliquots, again, which I can export if I wanted to. The assays would be on the assays tab here and workflow jobs. So if I wanted to find out who's working with this sample and where my sample is. So this is 2 things. This is around findability, but it's also about collaboration. And this gives me a chance to demonstrate how we use right-clicking to get into a workflow without losing my place. So if I click a workflow job here, open up a new web browser, I can go in to see what the workflow is all about. Typically, we have a title and a unique ID, an owner, and a notify list. So the notify list allows the LabKey LIMS to email your colleagues when either the workflow job is completed or the individual tasks that make up the workflow job are completed. So that enables everybody from a collaboration standpoint to stay completely aligned on where we're at in the process. So back to our sample here. Then we go to timeline. So this really is about the traceability. On the back end of LabKey LIMS is a very robust audit log, and it tracks all interactions with the product and all interactions with the data itself. And there's no hiding place. There are some competitor systems out there that allow you to change the audit log. We don't. So timeline is giving us here a chronological list of everything that's happened to this sample. So I could click a particular element here, it will go yellow, and on the right hand side it'll give me the specifics coming straight from the audit log. So it's full transparency and full traceability. Okay, so very quickly, I'm conscious of time here. What I want to do very quickly here is select a sample type and just show you how quick and easy it is to add these to storage. I've selected the samples I want to put into storage. I select the storage button here from the top of the table, add to storage. And what I've done here is already configure a shelf within a -20 freezer with a 10 by 10 box. I want to select that. And it'll ask me then, where in this box would you like to put the samples? So I'm going to select some positions here. I've asked the system here to do a fill direction from left to right and automate that. I could do it manually as well if I wanted to, and then I simply add them to the box. You'll notice then in the table, as I scroll down, the metadata in the table then has the location of those samples here. So if I click on those, it'll take me straight into the freezer where I can then actually see those samples. Again, we're at the sample level here. And so if I click a particular sample, again, I will see the metadata for the sample. And if I want to check that out, I literally check it out from the button here. And you'll notice that that sample then is removed from the box, but the box remains grayed out. And the reason for that is because that's where the sample lives until I then check it back in. And when I do that, if I tell it how much of the sample I've used, it will then decrement the sample volume or amount and increment the freeze thaw count. So very easy to navigate, very easy to move around, very easy to learn, and everything really is driven by drag and drop by the mouse. So that concludes the demonstration part, at least for now. So just to go back to the final slide here, if I may. So what I hope you've seen today is how easy it is to learn LabKey LIMS, how easy it is to get off spreadsheets into a digital product and have a system that allows for findability and traceability as well. Now, if you think you're ready to consider a migration, we are ready certainly to help you. We have a framework for that. We would invite you to use my email address here to reach out to us where we can have a conversation with you about your data, to review the data. We will set up a free trial version for you and actually migrate the data into it for us to talk about, iterate and optimize. If at the end of that process you want to proceed with us, we have the option then to push that trial into production seamlessly and then continue the work and the engagement with you where we can then continue to make you successful using LabKey LIMS. But please notice we are here, we are ready. It's not that onerous, and hopefully you've seen how intuitive it can be to get off the spreadsheets and into a system that's more robust and forward thinking to help you exacerbate your research and to make more informed decisions. We do have some questions, so I'm just going to pause there for a second to go through them. It says here, can we describe the pricing model? The pricing model actually is on our website. We have a user-based pricing model. We normally have a minimum user base of 10 users, but we can talk about that if need be. And the more users you have, the cost per user actually goes down. So there's an inbuilt matrix for discount, which facilitates growth and scale in a more economical way. Where is the data stored? The data is actually stored in, we use AWS as our cloud hosting partner. We store the data for our European customers. We store that in Ireland for GDPR purposes. Is there an app so it can be used on phones or iPads? Indeed, we didn't build the product to be supported by mobile devices, but we have many customers who actually do. So customers who are in the field or using iPads, they can, I've used it myself on mobile devices, so it does work. It wasn't intentionally designed for that, but it's easily done. What is the implementation time frame? So this is a good one. We often work much quicker than our prospective customers, actually, through that dedicated technical account manager. We aim to get you a working and live system on average between 2 and 4 weeks. That is predicated very much so on the quality of your data at the outset. So if your data is well organized and structured, we have some customers we've been onboarded within 7 days, but on average, let's say 2 to 4 weeks, but it's very swift and very quick. How is support delivered? Yeah, as mentioned, so uniquely with LabKey, we have a dedicated technical account managers and product specialists. And so we will dedicate one of our team members to you from day one. So their job will be to understand your data, your use case, and your vision for using the LIMS, and to build out that framework to ensure that it's progressive and iterative, leading ultimately to that success. We don't change that account manager. You have the same person throughout the whole process, so they get to learn about us and we get to learn about you as well. So there's that mutual benefit and interaction. Again, we're not aware of any other vendor that provides that level of support. Are there any other questions? No. Okay. Well, I'm conscious that we've gone past the half-hour slot that we put aside. Hopefully you found that informative. Please use my email address here. As I said, I'm in the UK, I'm in your time zone. We're super responsive. I'm more than happy to help as best I can and as we can. Thank you very much for joining us today. We very much appreciate your interest and your support, and look forward to seeing you on the next webinar. Thank you so much.